thank you, Angie, for joining me today.
Thank you, Paul, for having me. It's my honor to be here.
Honor. I like those words. Right, you know what, Angie? We just want to really have a general chat about bits and pieces. And
yes.
I think, you know, I'd like for our viewers to get a bit of an insight into the journey that you, Angie La Mar, have taken from your starting point to where you are today. And I know you have a wonderful book which you brought out a couple of years ago. Full Circle, is it?
Full Circle, yeah.
Full Circle. And I know the book does talk about the path you've taken. But just tell us very quickly, for those who don't know, what it was like. And I think it's the Martin household, if I'm correct. For you, growing up, you know, ages 0 to 10, what was that like? What formed the Angie La Mar we now see today?
I think for me, my memories of growing up has always been very fond. I've always, you know, felt that I had a great childhood, a wonderful upbringing. You know, my parents from Jamaica, and just from a child, having older brothers, I've got 4 older brothers, I'm the only girl. So as a young girl, I was always excited to be entertaining my brothers and my mum and dad. So it was always mimicking my mum, my dad, or just, I found things funny. And back in the day, we used to have blackouts. Remember the days of blackouts? So you didn't know when that was going to happen, but we always had candles on standby. And in that time, I always knew I was going to be able to get to stand in front of the family, because you've got a captive audience right there. Everybody wants to entertain each other. I used to stand in front of the candle and light myself to get myself good lighting and just tell jokes, pretend to be my mum, pretend to be my dad. I used to make, you know, figure signs on the wall and just be a puppet and, you know, mimic 2 people having characters talking. So I was always performing. So for me, growing up as a child, it was about going to church, coming home, going to school, being around my family. That's all it was. Playing out, Knockdown Ginger, the area that I grew up in, Lewisham, everything was just community led. So my childhood was very fun, and pretty much like everybody else's at that time.
So you know, it's fair to say you were doing stand-up from them days.
From that, listen, I've been in this game for a long time, and I've been lighting myself as well. I didn't burn myself, but I lit myself.
So I wanted to, if you can remember that first time you got a paid gig, which would have been, you know, different from what you're doing in your living room. What was that like, and how did that come about?
Well, for years, you know, we started off as the Mamara Sisters that had our own theatre company, and we were always performing from. So I've been performing pretty much on stage since I was about 11. And when I started doing stand-up, I was about 18, 19, around about those ages. We would go to fashion shows. Now, I remember, Podium back in the day, and they used to have loads of fashion shows. Tony Wellington from Finesse Modeling Agency, he used to always book me. He used to say, you know what, Angie, I love what you're doing. Just go and do the shows. I didn't get paid. I was just so glad to get on the stage. I used to be doing different community centres. This is long before I even hit the Black comedy circuit. I was doing meetings and stuff. Anywhere they got a little opening, you know, sometimes the payment used to be little curry goat and rice. They would say, we don't have no food, we don't have no money, Angie, but we have some food. Can give you some curry goat and rice, and you can get drinks, and you and your friends can eat, just, you know, 10-minute set. And I would be great, so happy. Back in the day, Crystal Rose, Super Cool, all those fashion shows that were happening, and all those dances and blues dances, that's where I cut my teeth in stand-up. Those weren't paid gigs, those were just let me have a mic to see if I could stop people dancing in a club, in the blues, to turn on the light. I mean, one of my first introductions was, where if a girl who want to tell 2 jokes, I beg no move. And I remember thinking to myself, you could have said it better than that. Yeah,
just a little bit better.
Yeah, but I'm just glad that the mic coming from the amp, that side, I could manage to hold the mic like that, and people could hear me. And they loved it. They just loved that it was their voice. The Black women loved that I was talking about our issues. The Black men were laughing because I was mimicking them. So that was the opening for me.
So you started out doing it for curry goat and rice, which is not bad.
Not bad. I hope it don't end like that, you know?
But what about that first paycheck? Yeah, that first paycheck. What was that like?
The first time I kind of like started getting paid and it was coming up to this amount of money, then this amount of money. Because remember, I've been independent. I left work at 21. That was the last time I was in any type of employment, because I realized that they're going to give me this amount of money to tell jokes. I couldn't make this in a week. And if I get 3 gigs a week,
there you go.
I'm laughing. So the maths started to tick. So when I started to come out of the fashion shows, come away from the blues, come away from all the, even AGM meetings, I was doing AGM meetings from back in the day. When I started to then go onto the circuit, that was the black comedy circuit opening up. So I was Britain's first black female stand-up. So therefore, I was a novelty. If you wanted a black person, if you wanted a woman, I was pretty much 2 for 1. So then the gigs were like 3.
Diversity on top, eh?
That's right. So yeah, so I was doing 3, 4 gigs a week. That's when I realized this level of money in my hand, cash, rush off to the tax office to pay my tax, and and then get on with the work.
No, I hear that, man. That's lovely. But you didn't just stop at comedy, you know. Anybody who's known anything about your body of work knew that it went way away from just the raw comedy. And it went on to a whole range of other things, from theatre. You know, you helped with other productions you were in, productions you were on the back screen. Tell us a little bit about some of those productions that you got involved in, stuff like Brothers, Daughters. Do you know where your daughter is?
Well, for me, it was that I always started acting. That was where my beginning was. The comedy was a natural progression. So I stayed on that road because I loved it. But there was always the burning thing to do theatre. Theatre never left me. And I always knew from I was young, going to auditions. I wasn't great at auditions because I have dyslexia. So I always knew that if I'm going to do theatre and I want to be in theatre, I'm going to have to write it myself. So when I started to kind of confirm that I had that place in stand-up comedy, i.e. I will always be able to work in comedy, I could then take a back seat and go, well, I'd like to start writing. You know, my first plays, Funny Black Women on the Edge, was my first play. And that play for me was about saying, I want to see funny Black women and I want us to be on the edge. You know, went to Peckham Civic Centre and met Ian Thompson. And Ian said to me, Angie, sounds like a great plan. Put the play on, sold out. That play sold out literally for 6 years. And there's about 5 versions of that play. And then I realized there's an audience for our story. There's an audience for our narrative. I then wrote Brothers. Brothers started as a radio drama. We pulled in over 60,000 listeners to that slot for the drama series. And I thought, actually, if we can get 60,000 new listeners to this particular spot, all I have to do is write it as a play and transfer it to Hackney Empire, which then became the fastest selling show at the Hackney Empire Bar Hamlet. Now, we were doing 8 o'clock shows and 12 o'clock shows. I wanted to show Black men, no stereotype, just free threads, going through life and what that means. So that with Do You Know Where Your Daughter Is, that with 40, Take Me Back. I've got a new play, Pebble Veins, that's coming. Funny Black Women's coming back. So the power has always been in the pen for theatre. And so that's always been the thing that I will always do, that I've always wanted to do. That's why I went off into theatre.
Yeah, I remember when I went to see Take Me Back, and Take Me Back, is that the one set in the church?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I'm not a regular church goer, but the connections to the whole church ethos and what I said at the time was the honesty about some of the issues that you tackled. And I do find that when I do watch your plays, and I've seen as many of them as I've been able to, is the honesty. Very often, you know, we dodge certain topics. You don't. Why?
You know, the thing about comedy, first of all, It's comedy is social commentary. And it's the first place where the truth starts, because you're commenting on life as you see it, unless you're doing a different type of comedy. So for me, my comedy has always been, that's how I see things, that's how I see things. So when I start to write things, you know, I was training to be a social worker. The job I left at 21 was residential social work. So I was working with young kids. I've always worked with young people. So they have my heart in that way. So when I'm writing stuff, I think about my audience, think about what I want to leave. What is the call to action? How do they feel about this? You know, yes, people might go, that's a little bit too close to the bone. And it should be, because theatre is where that should be. You should be able to say stuff in theatre that people go, this is uncomfortable. But stuff that I've researched, you know, I grew up in the church, Kojic, Church of God in Christ, literally understood it. That was my core. I left church for about 30 years because I wanted to party. I wanted to do the worldly things, as they say. But as I got older, something was missing. Something in my life was missing. And every time I used to hear gospel music, I used to think, oh man, I know that feeling. And it centered me, and praying, and those things didn't actually leave me. So when I went back to church, I wanted to capture the church I knew, but I also wanted to talk about the things in the church that people weren't talking about, like abuse. And, you know, and some people were like, oh, I didn't know you were going to go there. But also like expectation in the church, people who are following the church and not getting what they want out of church and missing the very God point that you worship God, not man. So it was important for me to get that right, because, you know, one pastor left the play and he came over to me and he goes, you know what, Angie, you would have had to have been raised in the church to write that. So thank you. That was it. Didn't need any more reviews.
That's it. That's the sort of thing. And there was this, yeah, when I watched Take Me Back, I sat there and I thought about a lot of the stuff that you see people talk about the church. And it was nice to see it presented as it was, thoughtfully, tastefully, and very well executed by the actors and actresses. When you did come back to the church, I know you did a series of was it plays in the various churches?
I did testimony. I was working with Marcia Dixon. Marcia contacted me and said to me, you know, God has spoken to her about doing stand-up in the church. Now, at the time, I was like, are you sure? Because to the church that I was raised in, the last thing I think they want is somebody coming to tell jokes. And so we had a meeting and I thought about it. And I thought, well, I know the church. I know where the line is. And I know what I was growing up with. And I know what I can share. You know, growing up with a testimony service, growing up with this, I know it. I said, let's do it. And then that morning I said to God, if I'm supposed to do this, then let it be a sellout. Let it be, you know, chairs, no chairs available, turning people away. Make it a roadblock. Talk to me clear. That day, Marcia came into the changing room and her wig was slightly tilted. And I said, Marcia, you all right? She goes, we better send people away. The queue's going around the corner. We're trying to get chairs to come in. And I thought, yeah. So before that, we had done testimonies around the church because I didn't want to go back to the church and they think, oh, you've just come back to the church to cook because you've got a name and you're coming to use the church, because I know that people could say that. So I went around and did the churches and shared my testimony. And at that point, they realized, oh, you're a church chick. You come from church. And especially when you say you come from Kojic, they go, oh, you know church. So to be able to go and say, listen, my mum's an evangelist, my dad's a deacon, I know that. I know it, you know what I mean? And I'm back for such a time as this. I didn't expect to be here. All I knew is that growing up, I was supposed to get back into the kingdom before I die. I was thinking I'd be like 80 on my deathbed going, before I die, Lord, take me back. You know that, Paul, right? You do know that deep down, you know that.
Well, you know that because, you know, my mom in her later years qualified as a pastor.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, every time I would go home to Jamaica before she passed away and, you know, I go down for my trip and I'm about to leave, you know, get ready to go airport. she would say to me, you know, son,
Give your heart to the
make
Lord.
sure your soul is good with Christ, you know.
Yes.
You're a good boy, but that never let you in.
Yeah. Give
So
your heart to the Lord.
those stark reminders, and you know what, they live with us.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. But my question now would move towards the events of current day, and you know, you've defied what I would like to say were the early odds. Black woman doing comedy in a time when you're the trailblazer. You know, any black female comedian you talk to in the UK, the second word that must come out of their mouth is Angie La Mar. It's got to be. That's it. You know, myself and Eddie call you the queen of comedy, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. But it couldn't have been easy. It couldn't have been easy for two reasons. One, you're black, and two, you're a woman. Talk to us about how the environment you were growing up in and mastering your craft was affected by racism, sexism. How was it, if it was?
You know, for me, it was, sometimes it was really horrible because you knew that it was because you're black and it's because you're a woman. You just knew. You go to meetings and they'll say, we think you're really funny, but we don't know if you can make white people laugh. You know, they sit down and they say, you can't make Middle England laugh. You know, you've got all this audience, but we don't really want the black audience. We want the white audience because that's where the money is. You know, I've seen opportunity come past and I'm that close, but because they can't make those decisions, and you know, you've seen comics come up after you. I've gone to Edinburgh 3 times. You know, I've sold out. I've had great reviews. You come back to London to do the meeting, and it's like, that's when they realize, oh, maybe we can't do nothing with you. And you see your counterparts who are not selling out shows, not getting great reviews. By the time they've got back from Edinburgh, they've signed their shows. You know, I do interviews and they say, what's it like being a black comedian? I say, very different to when I was white. Because the truth of the matter is, you've got it all lined up for you. You see, Paul, they don't see us as stars. They see us as we tick a quota. We've got a black woman, we've got that, and she's doing well in her world. But do we need to bring her over here? She's quite a little bit of a troublemaker because, you know, back then, I do what I'm doing, I say what I'm saying, and I don't look like I can be controlled. If I go to a meeting, I'll say, I disagree. I don't think that works. I think this could possibly happen. I've been there with meetings and they've given me scripts and I've gone, I can't do this because not only would it go against everything that I believe in, but I would fail my audience if I perpetuate this stereotype. So I'm gonna have to bounce on this one. So half the people don't know the work that I've turned down. They don't, and sometimes they replace it with white women or they replace it with, you know, black actresses who maybe didn't see what I saw. So there were difficult times, and there were times when I had to bore through, even getting into theatre. Theatre's a no-go area unless you're connected. And there's a big snobbery around theatre as well. That's why you look at my shows are produced by myself. I hire the theatre and go in by myself and sell it out and come out. I don't fit into the criteria. My story, my narrative that I want to write about, they don't want it. They want something else, a different type of story that sometimes you think, I don't want to write that. I don't want to tell that story. I want my audience to walk away from my plays and say, you know what, I saw myself on the stage, or I felt that. Angie really captured us and presented us well. That's been my thing. And for some people, they say, that slowed you down, Angie, because you didn't play the game. Well, I didn't want to play the game. From I started in this business, I wasn't going to play the game, because I didn't know how to and I didn't want to. I didn't really want to look back and regret my work. Right now, Paul, I do not regret any of my work. I've seen how they've treated me. I was in Vagina Monologues, sitting next to 2 white actresses getting laughs. By the end of 2 weeks, I was out the show in the West End.
Indeed. Yeah.
They didn't think I was happy. I thought, okay, I'll tell you what happy is. Happy is when I write my funny black women and I put my black vagina stories in there because they got the copyright on Vagina Monologues. I call it Black Vagina Stories because we don't have the copyright on vagina. And then I write it in my show and we're the exact same thing that they told me
Couldn't be funny.
Yeah. So for everything that happens, I turn it into something else. I was in Loose Women. I knew they didn't want me back. I knew they wouldn't want me back because every black...
The only episodes I ever watched.
The way I sat there on this one episode and I was like, okay, they really want me. They pulled me in for a meeting. They said, there's a big cry for a black woman on the panel. They pulled me in. They said, Angie, you can talk. Paul, of course I can talk. Yeah. So this is a no-brainer. Given the subject matters, let's go for it. We would go into rehearsals. Then when we start rehearsing, guess what? That's not what the rehearsals, that's not, I thought I was going to answer that. So I don't look like I'm talking because they go, let's go to that person. Let's go to that person. And I sat there thinking, you've been had, girl. No, like, you can't talk. All that mouth and you're playing by the rules. So when I get home, my agent says to me, they said you didn't talk much. So then I leave and go, let me call some friends and let's do ladies talk. Go to Vox Africa and do a couple of shows there. So for every disappointment, there's an appointment for me somewhere else. Once I worked out, you're only sitting at this table chatting. Minor.
Easily done.
Easily done.
So you know what? That's an interesting point because now we're in a time now where organizations, and I guess almost everybody who has an opportunity is falling over themselves to say they want to be inclusive of Black people. Everybody. I mean, I see the expression. What does Angie La Mar think about this outpouring of diversity and inclusion?
You know what I would say to the community is, if you can get it, go for it. But be aware, be informed, have some understanding on that guilt appointment, whereby I've watched the networks over the last couple of weeks since Black Lives Matter, since George Floyd, and since the whole virus. And the Black programming that they've turned up, I just sat back and thought, I don't know if 12 Year a Slave would have been the film that I would have put on.
Would have been the go-to one.
It wouldn't be the go-to movie. Maybe The Help people will take, you know what I mean? Or just Mrs. Doubtfire. But for me, it was really about deciding that, yes, you want inclusion. We've been fighting diversity. You know, I'm not a fan of the diversity box. I'm not a fan of the inclusion, because I can't believe that we've come from the 80s when we were fighting this campaign to get to a place where we're lumped together as a group. Then you can choose that person who's diverse. She may be in a wheelchair, that makes her tick that box. You know, this person may come from another community, you can tick that box, but you've done your BAME thing. So I would say to anybody, careful, because everybody's feeling guilty and everybody's drawing for Black and saying, what can we commission? What can we commission? If you get something and they genuinely want to change, great. My philosophy is this. When we first came here, we said to each other, you want to buy your house? Let's get money together and buy your house. Now it's your turn, partner. Let's get money. It's your week. You go and pay your hand. Everybody got houses. Great. That thinking, we set up our clubs. You know, we used to rave in clubs that were owned by Black people. If they weren't so much owned by them, they were definitely running the night so that we could be included. The same with churches. The churches were rejected, so we formed our own churches. Why is it we can't do that? Why can't we be separate in our building and together in our thinking of decency? That's me. You know, pulling back our money as opposed to going, they like us now, let's keep giving them our money. I think we've done that for too long.
Absolutely agree with that. I think what that brings me to is of course, and I would never be forgiven if I had an audience with Angie La Mar and I didn't talk to her about the Real McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw your post the other day saying that they're gonna put it on iPlayer.
Yes.
And, you know, when I came to the UK all those years ago, there were only two things that actually made me laugh on British TV. One was Rabsy Nesbitt. Don't ask.
Yeah.
And the other was Real McCoy.
Yeah.
Of course, I struggled a bit to understand the context of some of the jokes because I wasn't brought up here. I didn't have the history. But I saw Black people on TV being what was clearly unashamedly who they were, giving jokes, which the audience got. You know, Felix was incredible. His monologues were just incredible. And because I was in those days on the train, I knew that train guy. I knew that guy. What do you think about them now, after all these years, finally realizing that Real McCoy is a golden item? And it should have been on iPlayer years ago. There should have been a box set years ago. There should have been all of these things out there. What's your feeling on it?
You know, the thing is about the Real McCoy, you know, when the Real McCoy, we were on the circuit for a while doing comedy. And when we heard this show, which was going to be like The American in Living Color, was coming to England and we were going to be able to get the opportunity. I tell you, Paul, when I didn't get Real McCoy, I was broken. I felt, man, this has all been a waste of time. And then they opened it up for stand-up and I got a slot to do stand-up. I mean, to this day, people think I was in the Real McCoy. I did 5 minutes on the Real McCoy.
You know.
God knows that's all I needed, because the next day the game changed. It was like, you did that, oh my God, money trebled, I could command more, it was just a fantastic time. And we needed the Real McCoy. We needed that platform because we were killing it on the circuit. We were selling out venues in big theaters based on what we had built in the Black comedy clubs. So when this show came out and broke history and created so many careers, to see it just disappear, this campaign has been going on for years. Yeah. Internally, externally, we have been fighting this case for such a long time. And then we heard that they've been destroyed, and then we all sat back, and then we came back again. How could they be destroyed? Because they're showing clips from stuff that's been destroyed. So we go, maybe, okay. So everybody's gone back in again. And, you know, from inside, I found out, you know what I mean? And so that nothing changes, I put it on social media to say, bang, have your day, people, because you know what? They'll see the interest, they'll see the love again, because you've said it now. I mean, the press isn't out on it yet, but the reason why it's so important, because every show, I watched Gold, what's that Gold program? Whatever, TV Gold, say. And I keep seeing programs, even Goodness Gracious Me and all those shows that come from the Real McCoy.
Yeah.
We're our stars. You know, when Curtis, not Curtis, Felix passed away, I saw him before he died. I saw him in his bed. And I looked at him, and something about him didn't think he was dying, because he said, oh, you know, I'll get through this, I'm just going to be all right. And I thought, he's in a hospice. They've given him days. So, and I looked at his career and I thought, well, what's it for? How comes you didn't get yours? So there's another burning desire to get those shows back on TV Gold, because the other day when they were pulling down statues, everybody started to talk about their shows. Oh, let's talk about what Harry Enfield did, or Bo Selector. Everybody was talking about the thing that wasn't important to us. I don't care about what they did in those shows. They did it, got away with it, nobody complained. No point crying now. We're not talking about that. Bring back Real McCoy, bring back Get Up, Stand Up, bring back No Problem, bring back Empire Road, bring back The Fosters, bring back all those shows, us girls that we grew up watching, and put it there to let our kids know we come from somewhere. We did contribute. We built all these careers, and yet what? We can't get a look in? Come on, man.
Yeah, it's the absolute hypocrisy. You know, when I heard, you know, and it's not just the shows, but all they're talking about, taking down this, stopping this, getting rid of this. And I'm saying, that's all good and fine, but you can't be trying to convince us that you've only just become aware of stuff that we've been telling you for ages. Meanwhile, you are hiding from the public a positive body of work which could help to uplift the next generation, which is what you say you
Yeah.
want to do.
Life changing. We always have to start again. Everything we do, we have to start again. So there's a new generation of comedians. There's another the white comedians can get old on television. We can't. White DJs can get old on radio. We can't. It's always the next generation. They have no plan for people getting older. But yet we've got all this wisdom and expertise that we can hand down and say, listen, you don't want to do it like that. You want to try it like this, because in my experience,
Yeah.
stop starting again. You keep.
And it just gives an opportunity for the young people to avoid some of the mistakes and some of the pitfalls.
That's all. But they've been told, I know some of the comedians out there, Black female comics, were told, stay away from Angie because Angie's a troublemaker. And they stayed away from me. They didn't come. When things weren't going right, that's when I get the phone call. When they're flying, some of them were flying high, it was like, you know what, stay away from it. And I used to sit there and think, what do you think I want? I want to warn you about that one over there, because if I can tell you how they treated me, you can go in there fully armed. That's all. I'm not trying to take food out of your mouth. I've got food. I'm overweight.
So what they've functionally done is disconnected us from our legacy.
That's right.
Denied these young people the opportunity. Look, you did talk about the next generation, and so we have to talk about your son, who has taken up the mantle of comedy and walked in your footsteps. And I've seen his show, very, very brilliant. Travis, how's he going?
Travis J, what can I say? When he came to us and said, I want to try comedy, I looked at him like, are you mad? What signs have you shown me that because he was a quiet child. Travis used to play basketball. He would go to university. He actually went to university so that he could get into the basketball team. I thought he was going to study. He just wanted to get to the basketball team by that university. He got in and he was playing basketball for years. And I thought that's what he wants to do. When he came and said, Mum, I want to try stand up, I was like, I don't know why, but go for it. And Kojo gave him his first gig. Went to see him, and I sat in the car. I didn't even go in. My husband went in and filmed it and came out to show me the recording. And when I saw my son, I was like this. Oh, he's actually funny. He's actually funny. And then I said to him, there are no shortcuts in this stand-up world. You just got to be funny. There are no contacts. I can't pull no strings. I can't do nothing. It's just you and that mic. And you got to be bare-faced with it. Don't try to make it. Spend a good 10 years seasoning and crafting your game so that you find your voice, so that you find your living. Just build it and build it and build it. And when I was directing his one-man show, he'd have to come round to my house for rehearsals, go through his material, sit there and go, yeah, yeah. Okay, let's rehearse it. Why is it funny, Travis? Okay, that's why it's funny. Okay, so how can we make it funnier? How can we make it a physical joke? How can we make it a mind-thinking joke? What are we trying to do with the joke? Oh, I beat up his brain because I do it with other comics that I work one-to-one with. My son was definitely going to get that. When I watch him warm up for Dave Chappelle, I'm like, you live.
Yeah, it won't hungry. He won't go hungry.
Yeah, you won't go hungry. If anytime you get hungry, draw for the mic and this mic on.
Look, Angie, it's been great speaking to you. I think I just asked one or two last questions. And of all the projects you've done, which one's your favorite child of all of them? All the projects you've done.
Funny Black Women.
Funny Black Women. Funny
Black Women. When I stand on the stage with 4 other actresses and just go, you know what, let's take it to the edge. I love it. I love it. If I could get stuck in any time thing, it would be on theatre doing Funny Black Women on the edge.
And your word for the 12, 11-year-olds watching this video and thinking, maybe, what's your word for them?
My word is, whatever people say you can and can't do, it's not up to them, it's up to you. As a young girl, I knew I wanted to tell jokes. I didn't know how that would play out. You know, I come from being excluded. I come from being dyslexic. I come from all of those things. And I stand here today saying, I still did it. I still have the thing burning desire to do it. And tool up. Right now, there's so many levels out there that get training, get discipline, get focus, and have fun with it, you know, and find something to stand on and stand on it strong.
I think those are great words for any young person, irrespective of what they're trying to do. Angie La Mar, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
And, you know, we consider you the absolute queen of comedy. And whenever your show is up, we're all over it. Doesn't matter where it happens to be. And we thank you for your effort and your service, as they say in America. We thank you for your service.
Appreciate that.
Thank you
Thank you for your support as well. Thank you.